Hey everyone, this is Rob and Elise at Rob the Movie Buff on Twitter and at Rob and Elise on Letterboxd, and hope everyone is doing well today. I'm here to review two movies, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Still, and the final two seasons of two TV shows, Succession and Barry. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the third Guardians film directed by James Gunn, with the group of Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Rocket Raccoon, played by Bradley Cooper, and Drax, played by Dave Bautista, back together for the final time, with Gamora, Zoe, Saldana away from the Guardians and among the Ravagers after the events of Infinity War and Endgame. I've sort of been down on the MCU in the past couple years. I mean, I found some fun with Spider-Man No Way Home, although I like not love it. Same with Shang-Chi, Multiverse of Madness, Wakanda Forever, and I really did not care for Thor Love and Thunder and Quantumania. But I was actually excited for this film with James Gunn's track record, both the MCU and DC projects. The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker being great for me. And while I have a couple small criticisms with this one, this is pretty much the best MCU project I've seen since the Infinity War Endgame era. The story revolves around Rocket Raccoon a lot and his past, with the main villain of the film, the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji. The High Evolutionary is obsessed with taking every key creature and species possible and improving it to the point of perfection, putting animals through experiments and painful surgeries to do so. Rocket's painful backstory has been hinted at a bit in the past two movies, but this film fully delves into it and makes him the main character and emotional heart of the story overall, and pretty much everything with him is just perfection. Uji was great on the Peacemaker show, and he's great here as well, taking a villain that's pretty much impossible to empathize with, and he's just chewing scenery, but in a really great way, and making him as insane and resolute in his vision as possible. Gunn's movies, they really shine with both his taste and use of music, and the needle drops he has for scenes with Radiohead's Creep and Florence and the Machine's The Dog Days Are Over, among other songs. They're just peak uses of music, in my opinion, and melding that with what's going on screen. Guardians Volume 3 does accomplish what most movies should do as a whole, which is, give the audience something they want, but not in a way that they expect. And it's a great final journey with these odd characters that we were first introduced to in 2014 as kind of like a palate cleanser for the MCU, and it gives them a completion to their arc, but not necessarily in the way I would have thought initially, but still really, really appreciated how it came out. Production design and the use of CGI in comparison to, the recent past MCU films, especially, Quantumania and Thor 4, where, Quantumania kind of looks like Spy Kids 3D. It's just night and day in terms of the quality. Nothing, feels out of place, and nothing looks like an eyesore. And, very few films are perfect, though. And if I had anything against this one big, it would be Adam Warlock was a tad overhyped and underwhelming. From the end of the last film, he's kind of introduced pretty well. I liked Will Poulter's performance and where the character ends up at the end, but I did feel like Warlock was a little too dumb and oblivious. Even though it made sense for the character and the plot, he didn't end up being too intimidating of an antagonist when maybe he could have been. Also, I do think there's no character story that hits quite as hard as Rocket's, even though most of the rest of them are good, just not on that level. But overall, this is a incredibly satisfying finale to the Guardians saga, and gives me a ton of hope for what Gunn can bring as the creative head of DC going forward. I know there's people who disagree, but whatever. Have enjoyed both times I saw in theaters, and give it between an 8 and 8.5 out of 10. Currently 4 to 5 on Letterboxd. The next film is a documentary called Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, which is streaming now on Apple TV and is directed by David Guggenheim. And it uses current-day interviews of Michael J. Fox, past movies and TV show and interview clips of him, and behind-the-scenes footage and his voice to tell his story from going from a child who couldn't stay seated and still and needed to move around to young rising actor dealing with, the lumps and hardships before being able to make do and then getting into stardom and hitting stardom and dealing with all the things that came along with that, to then all of a sudden being stricken at a, really unfortunate time in his life with Parkinson's and his difficulties to dealing with them, but now in a positive manner today. And I really enjoyed this documentary because it used framing devices like footage and recreation of situations in his life in a creative way, similar to, I'm not sure any of you have ever seen the film Becoming Bond, which was about one-time James Bond actor George Lazenby and, his journey to becoming a Bond actor and then leaving that role. But seeing Michael J. Fox talk about and deal with his anxiety as a young man, yet still succeeding while also finding love in the form of his wife, Tracy Pollan, who he met on the set of Family Ties. And then, speaking of Family Ties, there's a great sequence in the movie where Fox describes how he worked basically day and night on both Family Ties and Back to the Future, going through full days of work with little sleep or no breaks and moving between the two sets. And there's a mix of Fox reminiscing on his part while also showing his daily struggles with Parkinson's and how it affects his everyday life, all his difficulties walking and talking, affect his communications, and then, he has, days where he gets hurt because it's just difficult to avoid, getting hurt when you're dealing with that disease and having to walk. But it is somewhat sad and bittersweet to see how his life changed, especially dealing with it publicly and going from America's heartthrob to someone who people look at or did look at with pity, but yet his constant optimism and willingness to just keep going is so inspiring, and it really makes it a great emotional documentary. And overall, I'd give it about 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Next, I go into 2 HBO shows that just finished their 4th and final seasons that have made my Sunday nights riveting the past 2 months, and before then, before these last seasons that they're having, Succession and Barry. Now, Succession is about a family that owns a massive media conglomerate. It's very inspired by the Rupert Murdoch family that owns News Corp, and is created by Jesse Armstrong and stars really incredible cast that had 10 Emmy nominations in 2022 and 3 wins, one of which was by the actor that portrays the patriarch of the family, Brian Cox, as Waystar CEO Logan Roy, and really his role of a lifetime, even at an advanced age for him, and all the great stuff that he's done before. And the Roy family has been trying to decide who is next in line to take over the aging Logan, as his health and age are constant in the story in the series, and those issues come to a head in this 4th and final season. The siblings battling it out for Logan's affection and respect and consideration for the top spot are Kendall, played by Jeremy Strong, Emmy winner last year. Sarah Snook plays Shiv. She was, I believe, an Emmy winner last year as well. Roman, played by Kieran Culkin, with another sibling, Connor, played by Alan Ruck, aspiring to be a politician to the point of presidential candidacy. But there's also a mix in the family for the top job. There's also a cousin of the family, Greg, played by Nicholas Braun, and then Shiv's husband and ATN, the Waystar News Company executive Tom Wambsgans, played by Matthew McFadden. And though Shiv and Tom's marriage throughout the series goes through many ups and downs, especially in season 4. The performances by the main players are just incredible in each regard. And again, they'll likely sweep nominations and perhaps even wins at the Emmys as well. Jeremy Strong is just so intense and so into his character, and even the quiet moments with Kendall Roy. But the rest of the cast, the whole ensemble cast, is just great as well, and we get to spend more time in this 4th season with them. Hugo and Carolina, played by Fisher Stevens, and Dagmara Domesek, are PR representatives that work with the family to deal with any news or scandals. Waystar encounter. Jerry Kalman, played by J. Smith Cameron, is the Waystar General Counsel to deal with all legal issues, and she and Roman have an interesting relationship and dynamic. Frank Vernon is played by a great stage actor, Peter Friedman, and he's the COO and vice chairman of Waystar. And then Carl Mueller, played by David Rash. He's the CFO and a legal expert for Waycorp as well. And it's just one of the best ensemble casts for a series I've ever seen, and it's a perfect complement to the great writing of a series creator, Jesse Armstrong, and the directing by Mark Mylode, who directed The Menu this past year, and all the other directors that come in. The opening theme and music composed by Nicholas Brittle. He's one of my favorite composers right now with his work on this, along with what he did with the Andor series and then movies like the Dick Cheney film Vice and If Beale Street Could Talk. But his music is just incredible, and it's a variation of the theme music, which is a mix of andante and hip-hop, very classical music. But the way that he's able to change the theme and make it new and exciting, but also get into the character's state and head, is just beautiful. And then throughout the series, and especially in the final season, there are several episodes set against the backdrop of fancy weddings, big elections, board meetings, and birthdays. But all these big events, they all have life-changing events outside of them that affect the characters. And in this final season, it pays off some of those earlier episodes in those events in similar events this season. It pays those moments off so incredibly well and emotionally. And the siblings show throughout both their love and compassion for each other, but then just as easily let selfishness, ego, and past trauma affect their relationships together. Final season, I don't want to talk about spoilers or anything if you haven't seen this season or the whole series as a whole. But this final season is just practically perfect in my book, and a great finale to one of my favorite series of all time. The last show I will talk about is Barry, which stars Bill Hader as Barry Berkman, a former soldier turned hitman who stumbles upon an acting class in Los Angeles and decides he wants to go into the film business and try and leave his past life. However, an old family friend who gives Barry hit jobs, Monroe Fuchs, played by Stephen Root, doesn't let him out easily and still needs his help. Barry has to balance these two lives, along with the relationships he develops with one of the acting students in the group, Sally Reed, played by Sarah Goldberg, and a friendship with his acting teacher, Gene Cousineau, played by Henry Winkler. Barry also has to deal with the Chechen Mafia throughout the series, led very often by NoHo Hank, played by Anthony Carrigan. This series is a dark comedy, but from season to season, it just gets progressively darker and darker, and it also has more creative and impressive action scenes and one long take wonders as the series goes on. And they're able to be both intense and goofy at times, yet feeling mostly right and not totally inconsistent. It's like the darkest thing you've ever seen, but at the same time, it feels very similar to like a Looney Tunes almost. In this fourth and final season, Barry is in jail, and it's looking like he will pay for his crimes, but there's still plenty going on with him and the rest of the characters as he has at this point, and even in this season, just irreparably harmed and affected their lives directly or indirectly and purposely or not purposely. And Bill Hader directs a bunch of season 3 and all of season 4, and he just always does something interesting with transitions, framing, the camera, elongated sequences, and is able to just get great performances out of the entire cast, including Carrigan, Root, and Goldberg. And there's this season just a ton of great cameos, but they work within the context of the show and never take it over. Season 4 overall has a ton of very good stuff in it. Great commentaries on the state of Hollywood, the entertainment industry, for example, indie directors losing creative control on big budget projects, the lack of truthfulness in biopics, how history remembers people, etc. And it's incredibly economic story-wise. Like, there's only like 30-minute episodes, not much longer than that. Basically, the entire season, there's so much story and character interaction that's packed into those 30 minutes. This season, however, it just felt too economical at times for what they needed to get to at the end. And there's also some odd things time-wise that I feel like skip a lot, and they're just there to get to the end of the story. And the ending episode has some great moments, but it ends with some interesting choices that I just didn't feel it wrapped up as cleanly as I thought it could have. But that being said, I think Hader and the creative team did a lot of excellent work on this series overall, and I'm intrigued to see what he will do as a director in the future. I would give the series overall about an 8 out of 10. So, but those are my reviews for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Still, Succession, and Barry. And thanks for listening. Hope you guys have a great day. I'm hoping to do some more reviews in the future. Just saw Spider-Verse yesterday and absolutely loved it. Hoping to see it again soon and maybe talk about that and some other movies coming up. So, yep. So thank you so much for tuning in, and you guys have a great day.